Hey guys, it's Beth from ZwiftWatch.tv, and I know we all spend a lot of time slumped over our trainers, completely suffering. But really, a lot of suffering happens outside, right? I mean, after all, we're in a controlled environment, we have a fan, if we have to make a bio break, we can do that on the backside of Watopia Mountain. I mean, really, it's suffering, but, So, what do you do to prepare for a real-life sufferfest? I'm talking about going the distance for 200 miles off-road in Kansas. Well, to prepare you for the DK200, we're starting a new series called Rider to Rider, where a rider is preparing for a race, shares the tips that he or she has learned with you. So without further ado, let's kick it off with Drew Friestedt, Going the Distance, Dirty Kansas 200.
The Dirty Kansas 200 is a 200-mile gravel race in Emporia, Kansas. There are many important decisions that you as a rider and racer will need to make about hydration, fueling, bike selection, and setup. But one of the most important decisions that you can make about your bike is tire selection. The reason tires are so important are because the riding surface in Emporia is unlike anything that you've probably ridden in the past. The riding surface is predominantly flint rock, and flint rock was used by the Indians to make arrowheads. So you can only imagine what riding on arrowheads does to your tire. So picking the right tire is critically important to making it through Dirty Kansas. And some of the things that you need to consider when picking a tire are: number one, puncture protection; number two, weight; and number three, tire width. So let's talk about the first one. There's several different tires out there that are very lightweight but don't have proper puncture protection for Emporia, for riding in Dirty Kansas. There's many other tires out there that provide bead-to-bead protection, but are also very heavy. So there's a trade-off. Puncture protection means more weight, and more weight obviously means more rolling resistance, but to the extent that you don't get flats in the Dirty Kansas, means that you don't have to stop to change tubes and fix flats. One of the things that riders have said in the past is, once you start to get a flat at Dirty Kansas, you continue to get flats over and over. And the reason that is because the flint rock gets in the inside of the tire when you put your tube in, and the flint rock slowly sort of works its way into the latex tube and causes punctures. So once you get one puncture, you can expect to get many punctures. So selecting a tire that has bead-to-bead puncture protection is critically important, and in my experience and my recommendation is to go for a heavier tire that has bead-to-bead tire protection. So two tires in particular that I believe are made specifically for Kansas are the Terravale Cannonball and also the Panaracer Gravel King. Those are two tires that I researched extensively, and I believe that they were made specifically for Dirty Kansas type events where the riding surfaces are very rough, very harsh. They're heavier tires. They weigh between 490 grams and a little bit over 500 grams, but they provide the kind of bead-to-bead tire protection that is going to protect against sidewall slashes. The last thing to think about when selecting a tire for Dirty Kansas is the tire width. I believe there's really two selections. There's a 36C or there's a 40C tire. There's a number of good 36s and 40C tires, but the more experienced racers select the tire width based on the riding conditions. So when the conditions are dry, the more experienced racers generally are running 40 or 42C tires. When the conditions get muddy, the more experienced riders will generally run 36C tires, and the reason that is for mud clearance between the frame and the tire. The type of mud in Emporia, it sticks to your tire, so it's been described as peanut butter. It's like riding through peanut butter with shards of glass. That really is what the mud is like in Emporia. So that peanut butter and shards of glass stick to your tire and can make it very difficult for the tire to even rotate through the frame, because the clearance between the tire and the frame gets very tight when you have all this mud caked on. In summary, there's 3 important decisions you need to make about tire selection at Dirty Kanza. I recommend a tire that has bead-to-bead tire protection. If you don't, you're going to run the risk of getting a sidewall slash. Second, I recommend balancing the weight of the tire with tire protection. I personally am going to go with a heavier tire that has better sidewall slashing protection and obviously bead-to-bead protection. And finally, I'm going to run a 42C tire if the conditions are dry, and I'm going to reduce the width of the tire to a 36 if the conditions are wet.
Thanks, Drew. And you're not going to want to miss part 2, where he talks about fueling, logistics, and your bike setup. So be on the lookout for that. And if you have any tips that you'd like to share, if you're preparing for a race or just some general tips, let me know. ZwiftWatch.tv at gmail.com. Right on.